Okay, not wasting any time, talking 36. Unit 36 in Arizona, deer draw 2023, what to expect and the differences in the three subunits in 36. So 36 is divided into 36A, 36B, and 36C. So basically it's southwest of Tucson. All the units that make up basically 36B, which touches the Mexican border, and then 36A, which is just north of 36B, and is that northern area. And then 36C touches the border as well, along the line of the Tohono O'odham Indian Reservation. So it's that western kind of boundary of the 36s. So if you're looking at 36, for the most part, there's actually a lot of options. 36A is, we'll start there. It's one of my favorite units. You can kind of hunt everything in there. It's not quite the Sky Island country like you have in 33 or 34 or 35 or 29. You don't have crazy high peaks with giant pine trees and things like that. But you have a really healthy population of mule deer, a really healthy population of Coues deer, and pretty good access for the most part. There's some private stuff, and there's a mine on the eastern side of 36A that is restricting access more and more as the mine kind of grows. But other than that, guys, it's a really, really good unit to go and hunt. Now, unlike 34A and 35 and some of that stuff, because you don't have those crazy mountains and crazy wilderness areas and stuff like that, 36A is kind of limited to its trophy potential. Don't get me wrong, there are giants in 36A. There are absolute giant Coues deer bucks and there are giant mule deer, but they are a little bit harder and fewer and far between, and to isolate the country that they live in can be pretty difficult because there's a lot of accessible countries. So when you're talking about these units that have giant mountain ranges, well, you go, hey, there's a spot where a deer could live for a long time and not see any people or not get bumped during hunting season. 36A isn't quite like that. 36A, you can run around quite a bit. You still need some boots to go hiking and get up into some of that country that is phenomenal Coues deer country. The populations are great. So although the trophy potential, in my opinion, isn't like crazy like it can be in some of these other units, the access and the populations are awesome. So that's what makes 36A kind of an awesome place to hunt, in my opinion, is you can hunt basically unit wide, not a ton of restrictions, and you don't have to be a rock star climbing guy to go hiker to go be successful. You can find Coues deer in just about every nook and cranny in 36A, and also have that 100+ inch potential. You know, there has been definitely every single year, 100 to 120 inch deer taken out of 36A, but typically it's not a place where guys will go and specifically try to trophy hunt. So, which also makes the draw odds favorable for you because there hasn't been a ton of publicity as far as how big some of these deer are. So a lot of guys will wait and save their bonus points for a unit that they perceive to be a better trophy unit, where 36A has better draw odds because of that. So great place to go hunting. The mule deer stuff is all pretty much around the hills. So there's a lot of little hills and isolated hills and little mountains in 36A, and the mule deer live basically all around those in the flats. And then the Coues deer live kind of in between. They live all the way up in the top of these little hills, and then sometimes they'll be in the flats too, just kind of depending on what they're feeling like that day. So you can pretty much find mule deer and Coues deer throughout the entire unit. And even the mule deer, they can get up into some of the higher elevation stuff as well. And then the Coues deer can get into some of that lower elevation stuff too. So expect to see a lot of deer in 36A, and just a lot of deer in general. You just go driving around, you'll see tons of mule deer and Coues deer just all over the place. So anyway, to Hunt trophy deer though, obviously you got to be creative. You got to get your boots on. You got to go hiking to places that a lot of people aren't going to go, and you got to be consistent. Scouting really does help in 36A, being in there and understanding the kind of the patterns of some of these deer. So 36B, very, very different than 36A for that reason that there's a ton of country in 36B that you cannot access with a road or a quad or anything like that. It's kind of like, it's not like there's not very much wilderness area, so to speak, like the actual designated wilderness area, but there's a ton of roadless country. So a lot of stuff that has no roads, no good access, very, very hard to get there, outside of hiking into it. And there's just a ton of country. 36B is a giant unit, basically primarily a Coues unit. They do give out a few mule deer tags, and the mule deer live on the periphery. They live in that lower country outside, which does pretty much, the mule deer pretty much just live on the surrounding. If you draw a line around 36B on the outline, they do live in there. Where 36A, they kind of live throughout the whole entire unit. Where 36B pretty much goes into these really cool rock formations, mountain ranges in the entire unit, and it's strictly Coues deer habitat for the most part, anytime you get up out of the desert flats. So what to expect in 36B, there is a ton of tags. They do give out a ton of tags because there are a ton of Coues deer. So these hunts that they give out, and all these units have 4 to 5 Coues deer hunts in them. So great units. They give out a ton of tags. There's good populations, but these tags are like 700 to 750 tags a piece. So expect to see some people in 36B, expect to see a lot of deer in 36B, and expect to work pretty hard to get a good Coues deer buck. You got to work pretty hard in 36B. You got to be creative. You got to spend time. You got to be behind the glass. You really got to put the effort in to do that. So 36B, the draw odds are okay. They're not like that difficult, but they're also not a guarantee. So it's easier to get drawn in 36A than it is in 36B for Coues deer and for mule deer, because 36B does have a higher trophy potential just because of what I just described. The lack of access in a lot of 36B allows deer to grow bigger and live longer. So there is that trophy potential. 36B has produced some giant bucks every single year. So those bucks do live in a lot of country that people aren't going to be glassing off the road. So that's something to keep in mind. Great unit, a little bit harder to get drawn if you're a resident or a non-resident, but worth the 1 or 2 to 3 year or more, depending on what hunt you're doing. They have all these units have a late October, mid-November, early December, and then a trophy hunt. So it just depends on what hunt you're looking at. Typically, the early hunts are the harder to get drawn for ones. The mid-November and early December hunts typically are a little bit easier to get drawn for. Guys like to isolate and try to get the trophy hunting. They like to use that first hunt as a trophy hunt because it's the first crack at these deer. Weather's a little bit warmer. And the December tag isn't typically like a trophy tag like you would have in some of the more northern units, because a lot of times these deer aren't fully rutting in mid to late December. So that's just something to keep in mind too. The later December tags are a little bit easier to get drawn for. The weather is a little bit cooler. It's probably not going to be a full tilt rut hunt, but it's going to give you, there's going to be a lot less competition, a lot less people out there trying to hunt deer along with you, and the weather's going to be great. So the deer should be up on their feet a little bit longer. So 36C is actually kind of known for both the mule deer and Coues deer. So there's giant mule deer that have been shot out of 36C. Part of that reason is because it's so close to Sonora. I mean, these are some of these deer that come out here are true Sonoran mule deer bucks. So 36C has a lot of flat country. It's basically flat until you hit the Baba Kivri mountain range. I think that's what it's called. The mountain range, it basically is a giant mountain range to the west. I always just look at it because you see the Baba Kivri Peak from pretty much anywhere in that area, and that's a landmark for the Tohono O'odham Indian Reservation, which is not, you can't cross that. You can't, there's restricted access there. You can't cross over the Indian Reservation and go hunting. So Great mule deer hunting in 36C. They don't give out a ton of rifle tags, and it's not a very easy hunt. Hunting those deer in the rifle season is pretty difficult. The weather's warm. The deer all live in these arroyos or washes. Very hard to glass these mule deer bucks. They're not very active during that early season. Typically, it's a better archery hunt in the later on in the year when these deer are out running. You can actually see them and they're out in the open. But for Coues deer, same thing. A very, very famous unit for Coues deer. There's been some world records. There has been some interesting deer coming out because what deer do is not only you have the Mexican border, but you have the Indian reservation where they don't actually do a whole lot of hunting. No real registered hunting. There is hunting, I think, by the residents, the natives there, but not a lot of hunting as far as we're concerned. So some of those deer that live up on the top of the Indian reservation, they get giant, they get old, and they come over to our side in 36C and do some rutting or do some whatever, lounging around, getting some water, and they get shot and they're giant. There's been some interesting world records to come out of there, to say the least. If you ever do any research on 36C, there has been some giant deer that have been confiscated for one reason or the other. They've come out of there, but great unit to hunt, great unit to draw. What they do differently in 36C is they have the late season in 36C, which is December 15th through 31st. They give out a lot of tags. So what they do in 36C almost every year is they do they give out 100 to 150 tags for every single hunt, which is kind of cool. It mixes things up. So they don't give out a ton of tags. But that later hunt, where most every other unit in the state, that December 15 hunt, that trophy Coues deer hunt, they give out 100 and some odd tags. So they'll give out 100, 125 tags for that hunt. So it's kind of a cool opportunity. Makes the draw odds better to draw that late season hunt, and it makes it a hunt that's realistic and something that you're not going to blow 10 points on. You can hunt that every 3 or 4 years as a resident or non-resident, just kind of depending. A little bit more for non-residents, but. Also, again, I want to touch specifically about 36C. Access is a little bit tricky. So it's not a ton of private land, but you have ranches and you have a lot of lock gates. So when you look on a map at 36C and some of these roads, it looks like they go, basically you can run the whole north to south on some of these roads. That's not necessarily the case. So you really got to get in there and scout, understand what's locked up. A lot of it's foot access. There's some ranches that are foot access only. And like I said, Border Patrol keeps it pretty locked down, keeps patrol of that area pretty well. There's the Buenos Aires Wildlife Refuge is pretty much makes up all the southern part of 36C and western part of 36B. A lot of grasslands, really phenomenal country. So again, I could talk about 36A, B, and C for a long time, but I want to give you guys the draw odds. I want to give you guys just a basic rundown and some spots on the map to really look at and kind of get a good place to start. So I hope that helped. Good luck in the draw, guys. If you have any questions about 36, hit me up. All my guiding, outfitting, scouting packages, DIY hunts, anything like that, guys, in my link in this video to my websites, and leave some comments below if you have anything to add to this video. And good luck out there, guys. We'll talk soon.